Hi all, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing a colored pencil drawing of a Christmas bow. Starting out, I'm going to use this toned gray paper, which I have decided to have horizontal instead of vertical just because I like the color space around it. And then here I have a black and white photo of my reference just because I like that you can see where the really bright whites and darkest darks are. I feel like this is super helpful when I am doing these more detailed drawings. After I've briefly sketched in where I'm going to have that ribbon placed on my paper, I need to figure out what pencils to use. I'm trying to keep this palette pretty limited, but still want to have some fun as my original reference photo had some reds and some greens in it. So trying to limit how many actual colored pencils I'm doing in this drawing just to make it a bit more practical and not use the entire set. The pencils that I started out with were a black and a white, and then I also pulled in some different grays because this was a silver bow, so I wanted to have those different tonal ranges for the gray. And then I knew that I also needed to pull in like a really bright red as well as almost like an olive drab green. Now, these aren't the only colored pencils that I ended up using. I did add a few more throughout the course of the drawing, just as I realized that the colors I picked initially weren't exactly what I wanted, but I will make sure to link that all in the description box below so that you can see all of the colored pencils that I used during the course of this drawing. When I start a colored pencil drawing, or any drawing for that matter, I try and start with the point that is furthest away from me, just to reduce the possibilities that my hand is going to swipe over it and potentially smudge it. If you end up starting at a location that is a little bit closer to you, then you could always use like a piece of tracing paper or another piece of paper to place your palm on, so your palm isn't actually dragging across the paper and potentially smudging your really hard work. For this drawing, I'm essentially just drawing in chunks. So I've picked one of the ribbons to start with, and then I'm blocking in color in full sections. So you'll see that I start from one red, pull in the next, and then work to the next color in that tiny section. And I don't start into a new section until I've completed that area. Now off to the left, I actually have my iPad, which shows the full color reference photo. I find that this is very helpful because I can zoom in and get a better view, but a printed out color version of your reference photo certainly works as well. I tend to stray away from looking at my phone when I'm trying to draw something just because of the fact that the screen is so much smaller. For those wondering what paper I'm using, I am using the Strathmore Toned Grey 400 series. The sketchbook I'm using is a 9-inch by 12-inch, and I like this paper because of the fact that it is acid-free, and it's also an 80-pound paper, so it not quite as thick as cardstock, but definitely a thicker paper. And honestly, the texture of the paper is pretty darn smooth. I would say that I would consider it to be smoother or as smooth as like a Bristol paper. So I like that when I'm using colored pencils because you don't have all those texture variances that can make making a seamless colored pencil drawing a little bit harder. And for me, I really like having the tonal paper when I'm doing these colored pencil drawings because it's easier to push the values. I don't know if it's considered cheating. I guess I don't really care if it is, but doing the same drawing on a piece of white paper just doesn't provide the same effect. And so using the tonal paper, it already gives you that contrast between your colors and allows you to really push those whites instead of having them just blend into the background. I have both the Strathmore Toned Grey and I believe the Toned Tan is what it's called, but I really like both of those sketchbooks. They make these drawings a lot more fun just because you can push those tonal ranges. I am not sponsored by any means, but Of all the papers I've tried, I actually really enjoy those for being able to do my colored pencil drawings. I don't think that there are any other color versions, or if there are other toned papers by Strathmore that are in that 400 series and you guys are aware of them, please comment below because I need them. I normally buy my paper from like Dick Blick or from Michael's just because those are the areas that are closest to me, that are easiest to buy, but I am willing to buy other places to be able to try out some other supplies. The colored pencils that I'm using are, you guessed it, Prismacolors. Now, once again, not sponsored, but I have always gravitated towards Prismacolors. I don't know if it's because of the fact that I have used them since high school, so I'm just familiar with them, and so I'm kind of stuck in like my comfort zone of understanding how they respond and what pencil sharpness I need to have in order to have them blend the best. But I don't know. I've tried Faber-Castells and I like them. Those are in a different set, but Prismacolors for me are just easier to use because I've used them for so many years. Now, you may have noticed that some of my pencils say Prismacolor and some of them say Prismacolor Premier. I would be lying if I told you that I know what the difference is. Not that it really matters, I guess, what the difference is. They blend together just fine. I don't know if it's because you have a bigger color variety or my luck, I'm going to end up finding out that they're like comprised of different materials and I don't know. Who cares? I do own all the colors. It's just been something that I've always kept track of as far as for what Prismacolor pencils are available. Once again, it just goes back to the fact that I've used them since high school and they're probably one of my favorite drawing supplies when I have the time to actually like draw with them, just because drawings like this don't happen quickly. I digress. I should probably get back to the drawing. So as you see, we have gotten about halfway through this drawing and it's really just a matter of building up those colors. Now, there are instances where I would get done with one of the ribbons and then decide that I needed to push the contrasting values of one of the other ones in order for it to flow more seamlessly together. In my opinion, when you're working on a colored pencil drawing like this, understanding the differences in how sharp your colored pencil is really lends to how well it's going to blend. I've always felt like the sharper the pencil, the better my ability to lay down a color or to blend it into another color. When a colored pencil starts to get more rounded out or dull, not quite as refined of a tip, kind of like the red one off to the left there, it makes it a little bit harder to have those crisper lines and really be able to blend them in. Just for having a larger tip to be coloring with versus a much more refined one. But for me, it's something that I end up spending quite a bit of time actually sharpening pencils throughout the course of a drawing in order to be able to maintain a sharper tip. As I get closer to the end of the drawing, I start to notice where I need to refine those edges a bit more and maybe push my contrasting values. The bottom section of this ribbon had some really dark darks as well as some really bright highlights, and so just making sure that I actually capture that and it still looks like an actual Christmas bow instead of just a blob of color. So I just keep working section by section and blocking in the different colors, starting with a red, working to a black, and then starting with my green and gradually building on the base of that green to have more depth and make it actually look like it's curving around. This is where I feel like having an iPad or a larger screen where you can really blow up the image that you're trying to capture helps. For me, it makes it to where I can see variances in the drawing that maybe I wouldn't be able to see if I were looking at my phone screen or just a printed out copy. If you are only able to print out a copy, I would just suggest trying to print it larger so that way you can see it a little bit more clearly instead of having a super small reference photo to go off of. At the end of the drawing, I am going back in with this gel pen and just pushing some of those whites a bit further. These gel pens, I will also make sure to have those linked below, but I feel like it's a great tool when working on a colored pencil drawing to really help push value. In some drawings, I will choose to use a microliner to help crisp up some of the edges or the darkest darks. For this drawing, I chose to just use a very sharp black Prismacolor to refine some of the edges of my bow. And then it's just a matter of continuing to refine and add some of the smaller details to really help make it pop. And that just goes based off of your own judgment. You can push your realism as far as you want. I chose not to have like all the little almost scratches that I feel like came across, since some of the lines weren't super crisp like what you see here, and they had more of like the little scratches along the bow. I didn't feel like that was necessary, but you could push that as far as you'd like. You also didn't have to do all of the different little colors. You could have just left them in larger blocks. The great thing about art is it's what you make it and it's what you want it to be. So just stay passionate. For me, art's therapy. It is a great way to release stress and just be able to escape. I love spending time in my sketchbook and working on drawings like this, because I feel so happy and so positive afterwards. If you decided to draw along with me, please tag me in your photo or send me a picture. I'd love to see your drawing. And at the very least, I hope you guys all have a fabulous rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching this video and supporting my channel. I appreciate all your likes and subscribes. Thank you, and I hope you have a great holiday.